There's a difference between a horse you train by the book and a horse that comes alive in the moment. In cutting, that difference isn't created through drilling. It happens when you let the horse think. Lindy Burch has spent a lifetime building horses who are sharp, present, and fully tuned in. And her secret isn't control. It's giving the horse enough freedom to use their mind. In this episode, we dive into what every rider can learn from the cutting pen. Things like how to create a horse that stays mentally with you, how short focus sessions build sharper reactions than any amount of drilling, why riding outside the arena creates balance, confidence, and feel you can't manufacture, and how trusting your horse's try changes the partnership completely. This is a conversation about quicker reactions, calmer minds, and horses who meet you in the moment because you've finally given them the space to.
Dear Horse World, it's Lindy Burch.
Lindy, welcome to the Dear Horse World podcast.
Thank you, Noelle. Glad to be here.
I am thrilled to have you in the studio.
Good.
When I wrote down my season 1 guest list, I had a small little list at the bottom of like dream to haves. You know the list, like a nice to have, a must have, and then like a dream to have. Mm-hmm. And you were on my dream to have list.
Really?
Yeah.
How great.
Yeah.
Well, I feel honored. Finally got in the trailer in the studio with you. So it's terrific.
So I want to kick off the episode with something that you shared with me yesterday that I thought was just one of those really cool reminders of how these moments in our lives, they kind of can go one way or another. So for everyone who's listening or watching this episode, if vet school had more accessibility for women at the time that you were applying for vet school, then you would not be in the Cowgirl Hall of Fame. You would be a vet.
And I would like to think I'd be a wonderful vet. And I know I would have been, but I don't think I'd have been near as happy or had the great moments in my career that I have had. So probably it all worked out for the best.
It's quite a notion because, going to the Cowgirl Hall of Fame with Barbara, seeing you up on the wall, and then learning that about you and thinking that was a very big focus within a chapter of your life. And I think it's really cool. You say that you really bring a lot of that passion for horse health into your management, into your career.
Right. And I've used a lot of the training and the education that I did receive in school, pursuing that vet school in California, like we talked about. So, but I wanted to ride cutting horses from a very young age when I first saw it with my father, at like age 12. But for some reason, I didn't think at the time, and I don't consciously remember this, but I guess I didn't think that you could really make a career out of it, that it was something I would do when I grew up. It was just I wanted to cut and prove I could cut and train horses. I've always loved horses as long as I can remember. And, but I thought I needed to be a vet because I wanted to help them. I wanted to be there and make a difference in as many horses' lives as I could for the good. So I think that was my passion at the time. And then it just, as the more hours I spent in school and against the more hours or the hours I was spending outside on a horse, working cows and learning what to do and having, those wonderful days on many, many horses, I just figured this was a much better place for me than in a school or in a lab trying to get into vet school.
So what would you say to someone who's listening or watching this episode and maybe they have that same feeling like, oh, I need to do this career in order to be part of this industry. And maybe they're being met with obstacles in the way that you are met with obstacles. And in fact, the course of your life has presented so many opportunities, some of which you didn't even know were available for you. Right. And especially then, because these were things, you've done things that you were the first woman to do them. There was no one, you weren't looking to someone thinking, oh, I'm going to try do what she's doing.
No, there wasn't anybody.
So what advice would you have for someone who's listening or watching this episode that might be just about to do a pivot that they might not expect in the horse industry?
What I would tell them is that you really have to sit down and be really honest with yourself and just kind of lay out really what makes you the happiest and what you feel your passion is. And I think if you can work on your passion, if you have a passion for something and you can work in that industry, whatever it might be, then like they say, you've never worked a day in your life. And that's how I feel. So I would tell everybody, or I would tell people to just pursue what they dream about and what really gives them, what gives them that rush. That's what I did.
The juice.
Yeah.
You called it the juice yesterday.
I didn't
I want to talk about that because that was actually, I think that's a really empowering piece. So yesterday, everyone, to give some context, I had the opportunity to cut my first cow at Lindy's place with Barbara on Shorty Boone's Mall. Amazing horse. And it was that was like a really iconic moment for me. I definitely had to pinch myself a number of times. But before we got in the arena, you said something and it really made an impression on me because I hadn't really heard it that way before. We were talking about those nerves you get before you do something big, before you compete, or before you're going to maybe challenge yourself in a way you haven't challenged yourself before. Could you share a little bit about your opinion about those nerves, that feeling, that rattled feeling that we get?
Well, I think it probably is pretty common with most competitors that are at a certain level, that why people said, well, you've won this, you've won the futurity, you've won the world, you've won lots of money, you're the first, like you said, you're the first woman to do all these things. Why you still do it? Why are you doing it? Well, I just love it. But what I really love, if I really think about it, I love how I feel when I get to go compete. I love that juice. I love sitting there, walking to the horse, watching cows. The whole process is something for me that it's like going to church. It's like being in church for me. It's like there's nothing better than sitting there and you just feel so happy and so grounded and so alert and alive. And I feel all those things at the same time when I get to compete on a favorite horse.
So do you get nervous still?
I'm asked that a lot, and I don't think I get nervous. What I think, I get a little edgy, and I get edgy in the sense that I want to do my job. I want to pick the right cows. Because that's the rider's single most important responsibility, really, on a cutting horse, is to be able to choose the right cow and get it cut smoothly and cleanly and get credit, get your score going upwards instead of down on that first cut. And so I'm really telling myself, do your job. And then I have a list of cows that I think in my help have, offered, yeah, we like those cows, or we like this cow better, or we don't like that cow. So I take into everybody's opinion, if they'll give it, and it's welcome. But by the end of the day, I have to make that choice and cut what I feel will show my mare the best. And so that's where I'm on edge. That's where I want to make sure I do the right thing to get her or him set up in the best possible way to have the highest score.
Okay, before we dive into, because I mean, even before we press record, I love hearing the way you talk about the strategy and all of the the depth that goes into cutting as a sport.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to, okay, when did you realize that you wanted to dedicate your life to cutting in a way that you have?
Well, what sparked, because of all the, the conversations we had yesterday.
Yes.
So I was really thinking about, okay, when did I start? When did I really know? And I'm going to tell you that I think I really knew when I was 12 years old, when the minute I saw cutting. And everybody knows the story that's read anything about me, but my family and I were taking a family Sunday drive that we always had to do for my mother because she didn't ride. So Sundays were Mom's days. So we had to pile in the station wagon. Us 3 kids, I'm the oldest, and drive up somewhere cool to have lunch with Mom and look at the sights or look at a town or do whatever, shop.
Do something not horse related.
Not horse related, which of course I hated. Hated. And I would get car sick in that station wagon anyway. I didn't like it. But my dad saw some horse trailers parked alongside the road, big parking lot, dirt parking lot for the horse trailers in Ojai, California. So he pulled in, and we pull in there, and everybody gets out, and Dad and I, we go up to the fence, and it was a board fenced arena, an old arena. Mm-hmm. We climbed up there and sat on the top rail and watched this competition, and I turned and said to him, I said, what is it? What are they doing? What is this? Because I didn't have any clue. And he said, well, these are cutting horses. And he explained the concept a little bit. And I said, we sat there and watched in silence for a while. And he said, okay, ready? Let's get going. It's getting dark or whatever. And I go, you know what? This is what I want to do. And he looked at me and he said, really? And I said, yeah, this is what I want to do. And he said, well, if you work hard enough, I'm sure you can do it. And that was it. And I think, and I'd ridden horses. I was avid rider, rode all over town and everywhere I wasn't supposed to ride, in all the washes and hills and through rivers and I'm a very experienced rider at 12, but I'd never cut. And my dad used to ride endurance races, so I would go with him up in the mountains and ride with him a little bit, like when I was 6, 8 years old. So, but I'd never seen cutting. And so that was the point where I went, yeah, I'm going to do this.
Do you think kids, because there's and you correct me if I'm wrong, but what I observe in different subsects of the horse world is there seems to be a very big focus on get young kids into different types of riding, get them competing, get them, okay, you want to be, a cutting rider, you want to be a reining rider, you want to barrel, you want to jump, you want to whatever
with a horse.
Yeah, get them in the ring early.
Right.
Get them riding in our, and show in Hunter Jumper, those kids are doing ponies when they're
right,
so young. And I sometimes, some of the iconic, great masters that have sat in this studio talk about a childhood that's very free of pressure, free of conformity, just really enjoying the horses and building their own connection and understanding and feel for what it is that they want to do with horses. Do you feel like we're potentially losing that?
Well, I just think we're losing a lot of the space that kids could grow up and do that and be free and play cowboys and Indians on horses like I did, play Pony Express, do all the little fun things like you said that it was just fun. to ride. And that's how I grew up riding, and I think now when you make it, when people make it regimented, as far as, here's your horse lesson for today for an hour, and you either like your instructor or you don't, or you hate the horse or you love the horse or whatever. You don't grow up with a passion for horses and loving horses and knowing, being responsible and accountable for them. If there's a big storm brewing, I remember I was with some little kids from school. I don't know how old I was. I was not very old prior to cutting. And so I was 10 probably. And we were playing softball in the street or something. And this storm came up. Oh, we got to put the horses in the barn. And I made them all come with me. And I'm, pushing the horses in the barn. And, we only had like a little 3-stall barn in Ojai. But I said, we've got, I got to get them out. The storm's coming. So, that was my first reaction. Not go run for the house or we got to go in. We got to, get out of the street because it's raining or anything like that. It was my animals. And I think I was lucky enough, and if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't change a thing. I wanted to grow up having that compassion. And I think that's what instilled in me in a very young age, the compassion and the welfare and the taking care of animals, whether it's my dog or my horse or my cat or whatever it is. And I think that if kids are just taken to somebody's barn in their, where you're getting your horse lesson today and you get your guitar lesson tomorrow and then you're going to go get your soccer lesson on Fridays. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it's almost like, okay, it's just something we got to do in life. This is what my mom wants me to do or my dad wants me to do. But my friends are doing it, so I got to do it. But, it's not like it's their passion or that's what they think about.
Well, it makes me think of, because this is a way of life, right?
Oh, absolutely.
This isn't just a thing that you pick up and put down. This is a way of life.
Right.
And so if children are introduced, I always wonder that now, like if kids are introduced to horses as a thing that you can pick up and put down, then will they ever truly understand what it is to become, like for it to become part of you and for you to become part of it?
I think it's probably possible. I'm not going to say it's impossible at all, because there are a lot of people that haven't had my start and are very, very, very good horse trainers and showmen and, stewards of our association and, great ambassadors. So I'm not going to say it's not possible, but I think there has to be some switch in those people that they switch into horses, and that something makes them really start loving a horse, whether it's a certain horse or they watch somebody on a great horse have a great run and they go, oh, I want to do that.
Yeah.
That's attainable. She's a woman. I can do that. I can grow up and do that too.
So on that note, did you have that growing up? Because if you were 12 and you said to your dad, I want to do that. I want to be I want to cut. Then who were you looking up to? Well,
I didn't know anybody at the time at 12. But what happened, which again is like fate, like somebody's always looking out for me, I think, for sure. And so like a week later, we lived in Chino, California. A week later, and there was a saddle shop across the road, Travis Pierce saddle shop. And then it went down a little hill, and there was a little white shop, and he made saddles and had a little tack shop. It was the greatest place. I used to love to go in there because of the smell, and I always needed something for my horse, like a new bridle or a new bit or a new headstall or something. And I started across the street to go see Travis, and there was a powder blue Dodge pickup sitting in the parking lot, and it said, Bruce Cahill, cutting horse trainer, Lynn Haven, Kansas. So I go, oh my God, that's what I want to do. So I go in there, and there's this big friendly looking guy with a hat on sitting there on a stool talking to Travis, and I go, hey. I'm Lindy. I introduced myself, and he introduces himself. He goes, well, where do you live? And I go, right across the street. He goes, okay. I said, I'd like to learn And then Travis said, oh, yeah, she can ride. She's over here all the time riding and blah, blah, blah. He had a little arena out there. No cows, just an arena. And he said, I said, I want to learn how to cut. He says, well, he said, I can teach you how to cut. And I said, okay, what do I need to do? Or, what's the deal? And he goes, well, you clean the stalls. I got 20 head of horses. You clean the stalls, you saddle, and I'm going to teach you how to lope them and turn back. And if you can do all that right, I'll teach you how to cut. And I said, what do I have to pay you to do that? And I said, how much will that cost? Because I'm thinking I'm going to have to get some money somewhere. And I had a little business. I raised dairy calves. So like when the dairies all around Chino, there were a lot of dairies. And they'd have bummer calves, and they wouldn't, they'd just sell them for like $60. And I'd buy calves and then raise them on calf manna and milk replacer, and then I'd sell them. So I'd sell them back to the dairy when they were like 6 months old. So I had a little business, but I didn't have a whole lot of money, probably not much at all. And he said, well, yeah, you don't have to pay me, but I'm not going to pay you either. And I said, fair enough. So fine with me. So that's how I started.
And how old are you?
A little over 12, 13.
It's very enterprising. I love how like confident and
oh yeah,
and communicative that is.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the way my dad and mom raised us. We were, we had a lot of responsibility with, and I, you kind of, and I wanted to bring this out. I think where a lot of people should have their sons and daughters in agriculture, in horses when they're young, is to teach them. You learn life lessons doing that you can read about them later, but they may be meaningless for many years for you. But when you're a very young age and your horse eats before you do.
Yeah.
You cool your horse out and give him a bath and clean the stall before you get to go in the house.
Amen.
All those things I learned at a very, very young age. The horse trailer's cleaned out the minute you take a horse out of it. And new shavings are put back in. And I still do that. And all the help I've had over my 60-year career, they do it too, or they don't last long working for me, because those are the standards that were important to me and were important to my father, actually, 60 years ago.
I love that piece because when I know you interact and you've spoken with people in the movie business and different walks of life. And I'm biased for sure. But when I think of growing up with horses, I think that you're raised by them.
Well, I spent every waking moment with them, for sure. The only reason I came in the house is I was made to come in the house to have dinner. And then I couldn't go back out until the kitchen table was cleared and the dishes were done and the kitchen floor swept. Or those were my little chores. Karen was my sister and I. We both had to do it. Or I didn't get to go to the barn. So again, a life lesson. If you want to do this, you have to do this. This is important. You help mom. You do this first, then you get to go to the barn. So I did. So in the summers, when I didn't have to go to school, which was great, I was, the first one out the door when summer
Every
came.
horse girl's dream is summer.
And so what I did is I rode from dark. My mom wouldn't let me leave until it was dawn. Until I had to get back before it got dark. Mm-hmm. And at that time, and I'd pack a little lunch. I'd saddle bags, put them in my lunch. I'd take lunch. And at that time, there's no cell phones. There were pay phones, and they were 10 cents.
Yeah.
So I'd have to take 10 cents. And my mother never let us get out of the house unless we kept a dime in our shoe, just in case we needed to call home, right? Mm-hmm. Well, where I rode, there were no payphones. So I had to go to a payphone. So my mother was Irish. Her maiden name was McEwen. She's Irish Scottish actually, and she said, it's a deal breaker. You call me every 3 hours, or you come home, check in, you can go back out, but you can't just stay out. Because where I rode, we called them hobos in those days, but I was down in the washes and areas all through LA County is where I grew up at that age.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, no, you have to check in. So I decided that I would start raising homing pigeons. And my dad helped me build a pigeon cage, a big pigeon cage, huge. And we started buying homing pigeons. And then I'd catch them. My dad made my mom a little cage, a little swing door, one-way door, in her kitchen window. And there's a box there to catch the pigeon in. And the pigeons would fly in, and I'd take the pigeons in my saddlebag. And every 3 hours, I would write a little note. I'm at so-and-so, it's 1:18 or whatever, had a watch. And put it on the pigeon with a band, send the pigeon home. And then my mom would grab the pigeon, and my mom was not a real animal person. So she'd put this huge asbestos cooking glove on.
Oh my goodness.
Squish the pigeon, like this, squish it. And then, pull the band off, pull the note off. And then as long as she got the pigeon and the note, I was good for another 3 hours. So that's what I did in my summers.
So you didn't have to go to the payphone.
Right.
Oh my.
Or go home. Yeah.
Wow.
So I was pretty dedicated that I was, like, we started this conversation about having horses raise me, or did I raise horses, or did they raise me? Well, I was with them. That I didn't do anything else in summer except ride, and I didn't want to do anything else except ride.
When you explain, okay, you're in the Cowgirl Hall of Fame. I sent a photo of you. I was standing out. Remember, I was standing.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I sent a photo to you, and I was like, and it was, and as you said, it was on your favorite mare,
Adele. One of them. Mm-hmm.
When I stepped into that building, and everybody who's listening or watching to this episode, if you have a chance to go to Fort Worth, Texas, and go to the Cowgirl Hall of Fame, it is awesome.
It's a beautiful building, I think.
It was so inspiring. Like I didn't know what to expect, because how those types of buildings are presented and curated, it's really like depending on the person and what the vision is for what it is that they're trying to accomplish. And man, did they accomplish it.
Yeah. You have Pat Riley and Diana Velma that really have been the driving force of that. And they have a great board. Kip Moncrief, Nick Sheridan, Steph Roven, Constance Yeagy's on it now. But I mean, they have great people on the board that are horse crazy and cowgirl crazy. And so it's really a special place. I really think it's a gorgeous place.
So you walk through that building. I'm looking at the walls. There's artwork, there's artifacts, there's incredible video footage. There's this big mobile, and it says, "Women who shaped the West, changed the world." What is it if someone sat down with you and said, what is it to you to be in the Cowgirl Hall of Fame? What is a cowgirl? If they'd never ever understood, let's say they come from a non-English speaking, never had any interaction with this culture, how would you describe to someone, one, what does it mean to be in the Cowgirl Hall of Fame? And two, what does a cowgirl represent, especially in the 21st century?
Good question. I'm going to answer the second part before the first part.
Perfect.
The second part is, I think, even though you haven't grown up on a horse, and you haven't ranched, or you haven't roped, or you haven't, had the hardships of a lot of ranch women, and then ranch women that also ride horses, and then you move to, the competition part of it and everything else, because the big, huge ranches like we talked about yesterday, many of them don't exist anymore, and we've transferred that ranch situation as much as we can into arenas so people can still enjoy that historical marvel that was,
The art.
a working ranch.
Yeah.
And but I think everybody can identify with the cowgirl spirit. And then what the cowgirl spirit is in a nutshell, it's like, I can do it. And I don't care what it is. I don't care if you want to be the best author, or if you want to tell somebody else's story, or if you want to be able to sing like Tina Turner, or act like Daniel Day-Lewis, or whatever, or play football or play tennis like Roger Federer. You can do it. You can do it if you really set your heart to it and don't take no for an answer, and break those glass ceilings. I mean, that's what they're there for. Break them. Go after it. If that's your passion, don't let anybody tell you can't do it. And I think that's a cowgirl attitude, whether it's on a horse or with a pen or with in sports. Of course, I relate a lot to sports. If it's with a tennis racket or a hockey stick, or somebody that saves people, that helps handicapped children learn to ride horses. Any of those things to me are, if that's your passion, go do it. And I think the cowgirl attitude, I don't care, a lady in New York City can have that cowgirl attitude and run, one of the largest companies there. Women run movie studios.
They do.
That was unheard of before Sherry Lansing, became the first one. So women, and it is great being a woman now. I think it wasn't so great 30, 40 years ago, but it's really great to be a woman now, because I think we have garnered respect from a lot of people because you work hard, and you're seen as a person that does their job well, or is very, very, very intelligent, or just very skillful, and you're a woman second. And that's what I always strive to be, is that I was a great cutting horse trainer, not a great woman cutting horse trainer. I wanted to be a great cutting horse trainer. So back to the first question. So to be honored to be in the National Cowgirl Hall of Fame, to me is probably my favorite Hall of Fame, just because people have to see that in you to nominate you to be in that. Not, the NCHA Writers Hall of Fame and the Members Hall of Fame. All the other Hall of Fames I'm in are fabulous. I love it. But the Cowgirl Hall of Fame to me is more that it was your lifestyle, your chosen lifestyle that you went after as a woman. So
I just want to acknowledge the power of that statement, that you're, a horseman first, a trainer first, a woman second.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to be a good cutting horse trainer.
Yeah.
That just happens to be a woman.
Right.
I think that is such a powerful call to action for the future of all the women that are going to get inducted into that Cowgirl Hall of Fame, because that building is going to get bigger.
Yes. Yeah. And it's already, the luncheon every year where they induct the new nominees it's such a real emotional, and I go to it whenever, I haven't missed many, because it's really emotional for everybody in there, not just the women going in, but the women that have been in, and then just women thinking, look, if she can do it and this is what she did, I can do it too, or my daughter can do it. And that's, I think that's really special.
I want to ask you, when I say the word horsemanship and then I say the word horsewomanship, what comes up for you when I say that?
Well, one, I think it's the same. would be my first answer. I
Yeah.
don't think it has to be designated horsewomanship. I mean, it's hard to change history all the way, and a woman is a woman, and cowboy, cowgirl. I think of myself as a cowboy too, but I would say what I think of horsemanship, if that's the question, is it somebody that listens and is more of a partner with a horse and is very talented in figuring out horses than just trying to be forceful with a horse. Is the first thing I'd say, because there's horsemen that don't ride, like a racehorse trainer. There's maybe they have ridden, but they don't actually ride the racehorse, but they're great horsemen and they have great horsemanship. They're great horsemen, and I think, and that to me entails somebody that really, really gets along with the horse, figures out how to train one and how to ride one, and enjoys riding it, enjoys being with them. I think that's horsemanship.
So a couple of people that have coined that term to me are women who have sort of questioned why so much of the history of horsemanship is very male focused. It's from a male's perspective. It's from a men's perspective. The books were written, and it's true. Even having sat down, had in the studio even representatives of minorities of within the horse culture. So Creole cowboys, for example, Black cowboy culture is very poorly represented in our history books. Even though when you look at the actual history of the word cowboy, it was actually a term referred to as for minority people or people of color, right? So it's like
very true.
It's very interesting. So when we look at our history, and this is what, and I want to dive into history with you because you gave me a history lesson yesterday, and so I want to talk about the history of cutting and cutting horses, which I love. But I'm curious what you think about that, because so many of the people and the literature and the perspectives and especially given your experience, having wanted to be a vet, and very small percentage of the positions in vet school were given to women. Women were considered in a minority group, right?
Yeah, at that time.
So we talk about our history. We have to know where we come from. And I loved that we shared that in our talk yesterday, was that it's so important to know where we came from in order to know where we're going.
Right.
And that's true of all aspects of the horse world. But to also acknowledge that history is somewhat biased.
Well, it's very biased, but any male-female history is biased. I mean, when, you look at a magazine in 1950, or you still look at a magazine, what's celebrated? The supermodels that, have 15% body fat and are gorgeous and 6 feet tall. And so as a girl in 1950, it was even worse in 1960, if you didn't look like those women, then, you weren't as good. There's, you were in a different category.
Right.
If you, so then women, because the whole idea is the man's a breadwinner, the woman has kids, cooks, cleans, is a housewife, which isn't even, thought of as a job. Well, we all know the difference. It's probably the toughest job ever.
I'd say.
But that isn't how it's portrayed.
No.
The woman didn't have to work. She just had to take care of 5 kids, a house, 2 dogs, mow the lawn, cook the meals, do the laundry, do everything. So, and the male wasn't. But that's how history was. That's how society saw men and women back then. I think that's been changing for a while. Albeit not as fast as it should have. But I can't change that. So from a personal statement,
of course,
I can't change how women are looked at or how women look at themselves. I can only say this, that I refuse to be I refuse to be put in that category.
Mm.
You know, if I wanted to have 5 kids, I'd have 5 kids. If I wanted to have a career in cutting, by golly, I was going to have a career in cutting. And people say, well, were you a woman's liberal? No, but I liberated myself. So I don't think it's not for all women. It's not, you know, some women want to be the best housewife ever.
Oh yeah, there's a big resurgence of it at the moment.
And that's great.
Yeah.
And for them, that's fantastic. You know, go knock yourself out. But for somebody that wants to have a career as a tennis player, or, you know, look at tennis, for instance. You know, look at the purses that women were eligible for, and look at the purses the men were at the same time until Billie Jean King rolled around, and look what she had to go through to change that. And now it's still not the same.
Yes.
But it's closer. And you know, there's certain sports that women aren't going to be very good at, and like football and some things that are just, you know, physically demanding, that are going to be a little different. But it's a lot closer in other, you know, other vocations, like in business, like in ownership, like in riding. Is, you know, we have more women riding cutting horses than men.
Really?
We don't have more women in the open than men. You know, there's still a few of us in the open division, but in the non-professional division and the amateur division, there's more women. I mean, they love it, but they don't train, you know, per se. There's a handful of us still that train, but when I came up, there was no one, of course, except me. But now there's more, and I think that's wonderful, because we've got some really great women horse trainers.
Yes.
And horse riders, and are, you know, leading the sport now. So I think people have to see, like you've mentioned, they have to see it, that she can do it. You know, whether it's run a Fortune 500 company, or whether it's ride a cutting horse, or be a woman jockey. Look at the, you know, how many women jockeys there are and how many men jockeys there are.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, if you want it, you know, it's not going to be given to you on a silver platter. You're going to have to kick a few doors and fight for it a little bit. But if you want it bad enough, then you'll do that.
So I love that you talk about, there's certain equalizers. We talked yesterday about how, you know, in certain aspects of the horse world, their sports are, the horse is the great equalizer. You said yesterday that the cow is the great equalizer.
In cutting, yes.
In cutting.
Yes.
Okay. Let's give everyone a history lesson now about the origins of cutting. Whether we're deep in the Rocky Mountains or down in the heat of Florida, we trust Yeti products on this journey of a lifetime. From the Roadie 48 cooler to the Yeti mugs you see right here in the studio, Yeti coolers and drinkware are built tough, smooth, and ready for anything the horse world has in store for us. Okay, before we get back into the conversation, I want to share something that has genuinely changed the way I feed my horses. One of my horses, Lady, who I talk a lot about on this podcast and who some of you know, is a sassy Appaloosa and a notoriously picky eater. She does not like feed with a lot of fillers or chemicals. She is sensitive in every way, including her skin, which has always made feeding her a careful process. She lets me know quickly when something does not agree with her. Finding a feed that she could eat consistently and that supports her overall well-being has mattered more to me than anything else. Total Equine by Total Feeds has been that feed. When I first tried Total Equine, I was super skeptical. It looks more like kibble than pellets, and I judged the look of it right away. Also, it's affordable. And as someone who's grown up deep in the competitive world of show jumping, I immediately interpret quality with price. Nothing in the horse world can be both good quality and affordable, right? Well, wrong. My horses have never looked better, and they love it. Thanks to important trace minerals like copper, zinc, and selenium, Lady's digestion is steadier than ever. Her weight is great, her coat quality improved measurably, and her top line has stayed intact, even with time off after our epic road trip across the country. That alone would have been enough to earn my trust. But that trust was tested in a big way when we took Lady and Galano across the country. Traveling over 25,000 miles with your horses demands consistency and nutritional integrity to balance the stress and demands of the road. Having a feed I could rely on no matter what made a huge difference. Total Equine kept both my horses nourished and settled through long hauls, new environments, and constant change. They are one of the only horse feeds in the industry to use Norwegian kelp, providing essential iodine, minerals, prebiotics, and thyroid support. I cannot say enough good things about Total Equine by Total Feeds. Developed by Dr. Harry Anderson, who I now consider a friend and ally in the fight for good horse care in this time of inflated prices and impossible economics in the horse world. I am careful about what I recommend, especially when it comes to nutrition. I've never spoken publicly about horse feed before, and I am proud to speak up now. Total Feeds has earned its place in my barn because it supports my horses in a way that is noticeable, measurable, and reliable. If you want to learn more about their approach to feeding, visit totalfeeds.com or pick up a bag at your local Tractor Supply. Let's give everyone a history lesson now about the origins of cutting, because everyone sees it. It's an incredibly sexy sport. It's very alluring. I mean, I remember the first time I watched, first time when I saw you cut in slow motion to music. I mean, it's incredibly captivating.
Right.
But the origins of it are very specific.
Right.
So let's share with everybody what the origins of cutting a cow on a big ranch are.
Okay. So back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when the West was still being developed, huge ranches, no fences. They didn't build fences. Not for a while. Everybody just, they parceled off certain land, and they're, by the up to the mountaintop, this was Charles Goodnight's, and over there that was William Bryan's, and that was somebody else's over there. But it encompassed many, many, many acres, because in many of the states you have to have a lot of acreage to run, cattle. Year round. And that's what they used to do before. And then they created markets in the cattle drives and all the romantic cowboy, that great 20, 30-year period where the cowboys, that it's so romantic for people even now, like we talked about, people wanting to cut and wear a hat and wear chaps and get to go on their cutting horse and cut. The allure of that is just as strong as ever, whether you're going to ride a reining horse or a working cow horse or a cutting horse. But the way it started is a cow's gestation period, is 9 months. And so every year there'd be some young calves, some baby calves. And when they got to be about 6 months old, and it's time to wean them, they'd have a spring roundup and a winter roundup usually. So they would round all these cattle up, and there's history books and people with a lot of history that I've talked to that have passed away by now. But because I grew up, of course, such a sponge about cowboys and cattle and horses, so I asked a lot of questions. They would have these roundups, and there's the roundup that happened in Canyon near Amarillo, Texas, was like they'd throw together 20,000 head of mama cows, all with babies, or most of them, 85% of them at least, and bulls, all together. And the only way to identify them, they had different brands. Well, the calves didn't have brands yet, so that's why we had to have the roundup, and to pull the calves off the cows so they could be put in a different pasture. The cows are now rebred, and they've got to worry about taking care of the pregnancy, and so they go to a different area to eat grass and have their next year's calf in the winter or the spring or the fall. So ranches would, they couldn't rope them because one, it took a long time to rope and drag, and two, it was highly stressful for the animal, and they didn't want to do that, and they didn't want to chase this whole herd, get this whole herd stampeding anywhere. So what developed were the horse that they called the cutting horse, because you could go in there, the boss would always get to ride the cutting horse because it's the most fun thing, and get in there and cut out the cow with his brand or her brand. So Charles Goodnight would ride his horse in there, and then he'd, wear that horse out, and he'd get a different, the other cutting horse he had, and there'd be a string of them. Each ranch would have like a short string of these horses that were predisposed to working a cow. So meaning they reined a little bit, they took a hold of a cow, they read a cow, they would move and sync with a cow, because you'd have to go to that cow with your brand on it, drive it out, and then when you got it out, a little bit away from the herd, and it releases that herd, and it kind of looks to where it's going to go. The outriders would be sitting out there, several of them per ranch. They would pick that cow up and then drive her to their spot that they're holding all the Charles Goodnight cows, for instance, or calves. And then they would separate the cows and calves, but that was done after you got the pairs all separated. So the cutting horses were like led to the roundup. They weren't even saddled until they got to the roundup. Then they'd saddle them because they were so special. And of course, things being normal, boys will be boys. They said, well, I think mine's better than yours. And they go, well, let's just wager. We'll put $50 on it or whatever, and we'll just see, and we'll have us a little contest, see who can cut the most cows out and hold them, and how that started. And then it just blossomed into, well, why don't we just have a real contest? And ranches would send their best cutting horses to the ranch and to the contest, and they'd cut. And the winner was the winning cutting horse of that arena that day. So it was formed from it was a real. They had a real job, and they did it. And the just like anything, practice makes perfect. And the more they did it, the better the horses got to be. And they started saying, oh, Blackie there, she's really good cutting mare. Let's breed her to Sorley because he's pretty good cutting stud. And then we're going to have us another good cutter in a few years. And so that's how it all began many, many, many years ago.
If you were to describe what makes a great cutting horse, and I want to get into the thinking horse, which is something we talked a little bit about, and how you train a thinking horse. But first, I want to, when you are developing your string, when you've ridden a lot of horses in your life, what are the great cutting horses that stand out to you? What is it about them? What do they have? The qualities, the attributes. What makes them great?
Their mind is the number one, for sure. They have to want to hold that cow. It becomes, it's like what makes a great racehorse, because they're all fast and they're all bred to run, but it's that horse that's running down the stretch that has that other one coming against it, and all of a sudden somewhere deep it finds another gear, and it keeps in it because he just can't let that horse pass him. Well, cutting is like that too. A good cutting horse is like, I just can't let that cow get past me. And horses are predetermined, cutting horses are predetermined to want to work a cow. the lines that over the years that we've bred. They all want to cut. They're easy to train. And we can thank, Doc Bar for that, and one of the older stallions that brought a lot of finesse to cutting at the time, because he was light-footed and very cowy, and bred him to some of those mares that maybe weren't as quick and maybe were a little more cold-blooded, but he put enough hot blood in them that all of a sudden we jumped a gear. We jumped a level where all of a sudden those horses were easier to train and easier to cut and easier to develop. So we started to see better and better horses and do, they, show their agility, which they've got to have agility. They've got to be built a certain way, strength in the rear end and agility and quickness, and intelligence. But if they're not intelligent, they'll never be a great horse. They've all got to be really, really, really intelligent and really want to work a cow. And then a good trainer can develop that, and then pretty soon the horse starts developing it on their own. And then, you're home free.
So when you say a good mind, and I know that, we talk about, and it's so interesting you talk about that jump in the breeding, because it's interesting that actually exists in a lot of modern horse sport, is that there was this big jump, and one in like within a decade, a breed or a subtype of a sport horse made this big leap, this big evolution in the pedigrees, which is sort of interesting. But do you think a mind within a horse, is it bred or is it made? Like, is it nurtured or is it natured?
Both. It's certainly we've proved that there's certain lines that before a person ever gets on them, that they're easier to train and want to be trained and want to work a cow. They take what we say is they take a hold of a cow from very early age. I mean, you can just feel it when you're two-handing them with a snaffle, that you start driving a cow and boy, they go, wow, look at that. And they get all animated and excited about it. And it doesn't take you long and they're starting to make a move to hold that cow, where you can take a really nice other horse, even another. I mean, plenty of quarter horses that aren't bred like that strain. That we'll just watch the cow and watch it walk by, and it's not a big deal. They're a better trail horse. They're better equitation horse. They do other things really well. It doesn't make them any less smart or less good. They just don't have that cow ability. They're just not what we call cowy.
So when you're developing a really, really top horse, what's some advice you could share? Because a lot of amateur and pro trainers of all different disciplines listen to this podcast, and we always like to dive a little bit into training philosophy. And we talked a little bit about, before we pressed record, we talked about how you and how many cowboys and cowgirls, or, before it was science, there's a lot of neuroscience infused in a lot of training methods. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit of your training philosophy when developing a horse. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about those short rides, those short bursts we were talking about, because I think that's so important for many of us. It is true of all disciplines in the horse world, the neuroscience behind it.
Right. Well, the one thing that I do that I really believe in is that I believe a horse should be, and whenever you have them in front of a cow, you shouldn't be trying to teach them anything else, but allow them to develop, help them develop that interest in a cow. So why I mean by that is, so when I first start one, I ride it outside. I teach it to turn because I trot around trees, or I trot up to a tree and stop. So I try to make that it's the horse's idea, everything I do to him, but I'm putting them in a spot where I can just sit down and say, whoa. But if they don't whoa, they're going to hit their head on that tree. So they're already thinking whoa. So all I'm doing is just kind of, it's like subliminally suggesting when I sit, that also means whoa.
Oh, interesting.
So I ride outside. I like to ride him across water. It's probably from my old 12-year-old days in the wash, but I like to, I don't like a horse being afraid of water. Up hills, down hills, loose rein. I have a snaffle on him or a bosel. And I do what I call cowboy broke, which means I just do that. I just trot and lope out in a pasture and go around trees. And I spend time with that horse getting him broke outside so I have enough on him or her where when I work a cow, when I start driving a cow, I can help him. I don't want to teach them to turn and gee and haw or move or stop when I first start them on a cow, because I want their attention based on the cow, and that only good things happen and fun things happen working a cow. Not, okay, you're not stopping quick enough, or you're not, give me your nose a little, quicker, so I'm going to, pull on you a little harder. I don't want to do that in front of a cow. I want them to think, I want that to be the fun time. And that's my way. I'm not going to say that's everybody's way. I think a lot of people would agree with me and a lot of people wouldn't. They like to start them on a flag and get them broke on a flag. Where to me, that's boring as it can be. And I can only think that my horse is going to think that's boring too. So I'd rather do it outside the arena. There's going to be plenty of hours in the arena in that horse's life. So in the beginning, I don't like to be in the arenas. I like to be out.
Damn, I love that.
Well, it's my way, and it may not be everybody else's way, but it's my way, because how I think, and I don't know. How I think is that if it's boring to me, it's boring to them. If it's hurtful to me, it's hurtful to them. If I can't see the reason in turning around real fast because the cow didn't turn, what do I care that they turn around fast or not? I don't want them to think I'm the one dictating everything. I want them to think the cow is dictating it. So when I'm not working a cow, that's when I work on, let's turn a little quicker. Here, feel my leg. I'm going to push you here, push you there. I think a great exercise in starting a horse is opening and shutting gates properly. That's one of my favorite things I do. And everybody that nowadays that I have other people start my colts, and I like them to start them 2 or 3 months, and then I want them. I can't stand it any longer. I want to ride them, but I insist they open and shut a gate. And you would be, it just astounds me how many people just get off and open a gate and lead them through or hand it to somebody else. And I won't do that because you can teach them to yield to that leg.
Yep.
Where it's just like a gentle, like you're helping somebody, a blind person, up the steps. You're not shoving him. You're just helping him. Here, step, step, step. Well, you can do that on the horse, opening and shutting a gate. You can teach him patience and stand there. You can rock him back. When you open the gate, you don't have to reach for it. You push them up against it. And that teaches them, those are all maneuvers, are all, I don't want to even say cues, but they're all applications that I'm going to use to keep that horse in position on a cow. And like I said yesterday, I feel like the cow's the teacher and I'm the substitute teacher. I'm going to try to put that cow or put the horse in a spot where that cow's going to teach him what to do. And then I'm going to reinforce, okay, the cow turned to my right. I'm going to help turn the horse to the right and get on over there. So I've reinforced that move, but the cow initiated the move.
I'm thinking when we were talking before we pressed record, you said that, like what we do requires cows and helpers, and in your case, like dogs. A lot of people, and I've seen a lot of people work cows with dogs, which I think is really cool. So it's like a community. It's a very collective energy. I really come to appreciate. It's a very different feeling, and hearing you speak about utilizing the natural world as a training modality. It's so funny because I've never heard that, and it makes perfect sense.
Well, people that have, and I used to have a pretty big barn that I rode horses, 30 a day, 35 a day. And I learned that to use my time wisely with each horse, and think about what I could do that day that would advance that horse, even in that 15 minutes or whatever it took, and kind of get in and get out where that horse doesn't get fatigued and the horse doesn't get sour or get ill. Is just kind of make my point quickly, put him in a good position, and then get out of it. And I think that I can do all that stuff so easily outside, and have fun doing it. I mean, and it is selfish too, because I'd rather ride outside than in the arena. A lot of successful trainers and a lot of trainers in many disciplines, they train in an arena and that's it. Well, I can't think of anything worse.
On circles?
Yeah, I can't think of anything worse to do. And to just work a flag all day. I mean, I'm not going to do it. I wouldn't do it. I'd do something else.
So I want everyone who's listening to this episode or watching this episode, I want everyone and all those riders, and Lindy, you know who I mean. There's so many riders out there who say, oh, I'm just a trail rider. I'm just a trail rider. I don't compete. If I've heard that once, I've heard it 1,000 times. I want everyone to hear that Lindy Burch would rather ride out
than in an arena.
100
times more, 100-fold. I lived in Carmel Valley. I was lucky enough to live on the 5,000-acre ranch in Carmel Valley. God's, pastures of heavens.
Yes.
John Steinbeck says. He was right. And we had two big arenas. And I would lead. You had in one big round pens where we worked mostly, but it was up an alfalfa field, and there was hills and everything. It was beautiful. I had two guys working for me and two girls loping and riding. I mean, I shouldn't say just loping, but I had two women, two men, and we'd pony 3 or 4 horses apiece up this alfalfa field and around some oak trees and stuff to get to the arena. And then we'd saddle in the barn and pony them, and we'd ride one. And they hated to see me take off when I'd tie those other horses up, or I might take one with me, and I'd take off, keep going. I'd say, I'll be right back. Well, they hated that. They hated it. I said, just go ahead and lope for a while, and I'd take off. And I said, ride them outside. Well, they'd ride outside for a little bit, and then they'd go in the arena and ride the rest of them. But I would go and do my deal. I'd ride up hills, and I'd look at the ocean, and then I'd ride down, and there were some real sandy hills, so that I could start down and just real steep, and those horses are just on their haunches, on their hind end, all the way down those sandy hills. It was so much fun. And I had a little box canyon. I could set 2 dogs at one end, which was open, and then I would gather some cows, which I was supposed to be taking them back to the arena to work with everybody, right? And I'd just push a little bunch in there and work those 2 horses. I'd, tie one up, work, then switch bridles, work the other one. And I'd finally show back up 3 or 4 hours later, and they'd all be mad. But you have to tie those gates pretty tight to keep me in the arena if there's places to ride.
So I love this because I shared a little bit with you. We talked a little bit about my mare, this amazing Appaloosa mare that I have, who's like one of the great loves of my life. And this mare, she will not, Lady's got no interest in being in an arena. Never has.
Right.
And when I first started working with her, it was really like even groundwork. Like I couldn't even get her in a round pen. She'd charge you. She broke someone's arm. Yeah, like she'd done some pretty.
So she had some bad experiences.
Lots of bad experiences.
Yeah.
Lots. And she's in Appaloosa, so she won't forget.
No.
And she showed me that you can do everything that you want to do. In fact, it's more fun. And she really liberated this idea I had of only serious things that we do as from a rider's perspective happen in an arena. What a load of crock.
Yeah.
But it's very validating to hear you feel that way too, because I still think a lot of us have this limiting belief that, oh, I'm only a rider if I'm doing cool things in an arena.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, I do much cooler things outside the arena. I mean, it's like, it's my peace, you know. I mean, if I have a bad day, I go get on a horse and go out. I don't go to the arena. On Sundays, you know, even when I was forced to give, you know, my help a day off, I'd go get on my favorite horse and take off and ride, you know, for hours, wherever I lived, whether it's California or Texas. And I just, you know, the bottom line is I just love to ride. And I love to ride a good horse. And I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of good horses. So it's only enhanced that passion. But I love to ride outside. And the arena is fine, and I have a nice arena, and I have great ground and all that, so I have a place to train, which you have to have. But Bobby Ingersoll, who a good friend of mine and one of the top 5 horsemen I've ever revered or known, is Bobby Ingersoll. And he said, he didn't even say it to me. I just heard it on a podcast, I think, or saw it on Facebook or something. But somebody asked him. They said, "Well, you know, you've had such great horses, and you know." And it wasn't that he was a great cutting horse guy, but he's a great horseman. And he cut a little bit. It's where I got to meet him. So I mean, I asked him. He probably will remember. I asked him 1,000 questions a day. I'm sure he got tired of it. But I said, he said in this podcast, he said, somebody says, well, you know, you've trained so many horses, and how long does it take to train, and how long have you been training, and what's your best horse, and how, I think the question was something like, you know, how's the best way to train a horse, or something like that. And he says, well, he said, I don't know how much time I've spent training a horse, but I've spent a lot of time riding a horse. And I thought that was pretty poetic. And that's, you know, I spent a lot of time just riding, not training. And I think that reflects what I think about riding outside. I'm training, but the horse doesn't even know it, and neither do I. Go around a tree, you stop and go a different way. You take a small trail and teach them where their feet is. You go downhill on a sandy hill and let them almost just slide down a hill like a little kid. You know, it's fun. And I think you step over logs. You know, you can do all those things that teach a horse good habits and just good way of going. And then when you put them on a cow, they're in complete control of their feet. They're balanced. They know, you know, whatever foot they're on, they've got good balance.
Yep.
They've got, their attention is on the cow because it's kind of cool seeing this thing move in front of them. And it's not like it's, they're not in class with a teacher walking back and forth with a ruler banging the desk.
Yeah.
You know, this is a fun thing. This is a happy place to be.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't get after a horse or make them stop or make them turn or do this. I mean, we got to do all of that at certain times. But when you're first developing a horse, if you teach them why you're doing something, why it's important to turn because the cow turned, why it's important to stop because the cow stopped, and get to the other side. And if you can stop him before that cow gets by you, you don't have to run all the way down the end of the arena to scoop him back up and bring him back, drive him back up again. So it makes perfect, to me, it makes sense to me.
Yes.
So it makes sense to them. If it doesn't make sense to me, then I don't think it's a very good training aid.
I really appreciate, the more I talk to you about horses and your philosophy about training, or let's say riding horses, and they'll just remove training, just say riding horses. Mm-hmm. You really take their mindset and their mental health into consideration. Yeah.
I think that a good trainer trains each horse to their ability, not, you try to match the horse's ability mentally and physically, and not your ability. Because if you try to make them all the same and do all the same, say as the one horse you think is the greatest horse of all time, whatever that happens to be, if you try to make them do that, you're going to ruin a lot of horses because they can't. They're an individual, just like a classroom of kids. There's going to be one standout that can do this. There's going to be another one that can do that. And if you try to make them all emulate that one gifted student for whatever reason he is gifted or she is gifted, the other kids are going to say, they're going to have a mutiny. They're going to leave. I can't do it. I quit. I give up. I never want my horses to give up, and I don't have horses that give up. They always try to turn around with a cow, and I'd rather have that in my horse than one that's this fabulous athlete that jumps over there and has this huge stop and everybody screams, but doesn't turn around with a cow. That would not be my, I would not think that horse was doing the right thing, or that would not be what I want. I'd rather have that horse turn around on one foot if he had to at least try to hold the cow.
Yeah. I've come to believe that I think if we take the try out of a horse, it is the greatest crime.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think you have to ride. I think a good trainer and a good rider, you don't even have to be a trainer. I mean, you just ride. You need to realize your horse's abilities, both mentally and physically. And maybe you have to back off a little bit because mentally they're just, they're not ready, or they can't figure it out. Well, you regress and go slow and go back, and then, let them build back up to that point, whatever it is, whether you're dropping your hand too soon or they're afraid of a cow or whatever, you just go back to basics to me and just build back up again and try to shore up whatever that spot is that they're not sure of, and that takes a little more time, but that's why we spend time on them.
And I think that's the other thing that I really love in your philosophy, which we talked about before we started recording, was short bursts, short rides.
Yeah. And I learned that, well, I don't know where I learned it, but it just worked for me is because it's easy to take things personal and you get emotional because, you really want this horse to do good, and you feel it has all this ability, and it's smart, it's athletic, all those things. But things just don't work out in that one session, and you got to realize when you're not in a good spot where that horse is learning and you're having a good time and you're working it the way you want to work it, and before it gets bad, quit. Just quit, pet him, turn around, walk off, tie him up, put him back in the barn, unsaddle him, give him a bath, whatever. And then, bring him out again and work one cow. Work
you're talking
5 minutes.
Yeah, you were talking minutes.
Yeah, just work a few minutes. And if you get what you want, like even if the rest of the work hasn't been very good, maybe you worked for a couple minutes before and it was just, horse was too fresh, cattle were bad. Nothing's working. Storm's coming. It's dusty. I don't care what it is. Then you know what? Don't press it. Just it's just not working. Just, it doesn't work every day. You're not perfect every day. How can you expect your horse to be perfect every day? So get off them. Do short training sessions. Maybe bring them back and do another 5 minutes later on. And if that's not working, tie them up again and do another couple minutes later, but just
let them think about it.
Let them think about it, because they should be in school. I mean, it's like if you're in school and you just need a timeout, I used to get sent to study hall all the time because I was talking or whatever I was doing and wasn't supposed to be doing. And, you got to go to study hall and make, just take a time out and think about it. And I don't, I'm wanting to go home to ride and I have to stay after school for whatever reason it was. And then you appreciate that and you learn your lesson. And next time, you don't talk or you don't do whatever caused that time out. So I just think horses have a short attention span. People have a short attention span, if it's
more now than ever.
Yeah, right. But, if they're not on their phones, I can't even look away from their phones. But like I shared with you, if a college student has 15 minutes attention span in a hour lecture, which is fact, then how long does a horse have? Maybe a couple minutes. You don't want to fatigue them. That's when you're going to cause injury. You don't want to get them too hot, injury, or you're going to tie them up or whatever. So it's better to, what's the old adage, live to fight another day. Just find and, just say, okay, this was a Wednesday. Wasn't our best Wednesday, but tomorrow will be better.
Yeah, it's come to, and from a neuroscience point of view, there's real belief in the compounding effect. So it's the power of, the power of small changes. If you take 0.01, I'm not much of a mathematician, but if you take 0.01% improvement every day, which you're not even going to get that.
No.
Right? But if you think about that, if you just get one or two of those a week for 50 something odd weeks a year, that's huge.
Right.
Dramatic.
In the long run.
Yeah.
That's huge.
That's that can be 50, that can be significant change over a year. And we're working with our horses for multiple years.
Right.
So I've come to really appreciate the compounding effect of small training sessions, not long drill sessions.
Right. And from a welfare point of view, it's so much better for the horse. And you keep the horse, you can really prevent a lot of injuries, a lot of strains, and a lot of times, as you know, our horses can't tell us where they're sore. They can't tell us they need an Advil. This was a hard day. I know, and you can tell somebody that well, I need to go to bed early tonight. I just don't feel great. You know, horses can't tell us that. So a lot of times, they're not lame, but they're tired. Their body's sore.
Yeah.
So if you can avoid that, you might avoid a more serious injury later on. And just, I see a lot of our great trainers nowadays they're very successful. I see them doing that more and more, short training sessions, which is really great to see. Yeah. Because through the course of my career, that wasn't always the case. I mean, back in the old days, they were riding a lot tougher horses than we get to ride now. We get to ride now like Maseratis compared to Volkswagens,
or
Renaults.
Chevy trucks.
Yeah, Renaults or something. Back in the in the 50s and 60s, they were tough. A lot of them were tough. So they weren't as easy to train, and they weren't as agile, and, so they weren't always as successful in their position and holding and controlling a cow, it's so much easier for the horses to do it now because they're so much better athletes.
Yeah. And that's true of so many parts of the horse world, like so many subsects of the horse world. Sometimes I've actually thought to myself, has our horsemanship caught up to the quality of the equine athlete now?
I think that's a challenge. I think that's what, as a horseman and a good trainer, that's what we have to really think about now, is that our horses are really smart. So we only want to teach them good habits, not bad habits, because learning is either a good habit or a bad habit.
Yes.
So we don't want to dwell on anything that's negative. We only want to dwell on what's positive and keep them going up that ladder of success and development.
I'll wrap this with a moment from yesterday.
Okay.
Which was this experience of having, like, getting guidance and instruction from you and from Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like surreal, y'all. And it took every bit of all my mental tools.
I know how much you sweated. I remember.
I want it to be very present.
Right.
You know, and when you have a moment like that, you're like, I want to be present. And I remember just being like, and I took some advice from Nikki Flundra. Nikki, if you're listening, I took some advice from her. I said, what do you do when you're nervous? Because she does all these movies with horses and she does all sorts of things. And I said, what do you do when you're nervous and you're like, have a moment of big pressure and you're like, I better deliver in this moment? She said, just focus on my horse. I just focus on what they need. And so I just remember being like, okay, whatever Shorty needs, I was like, really like, oh, he's puffing. I'm going to walk. I'm going to, kept checking his temperature and being like, okay.
Yeah.
And I remember and it was effective.
Right.
Because I just stayed completely and totally present with him. Mm-hmm. But I had this moment where I was working that cow and I could hear your voice and I could hear Barbara's voice. And for everyone who knows Barb and Lindy, they're very different volumes.
Right.
But
speed.
Yeah. And I love both of them. But I had this really cool moment, and it's such a lasting, I feel like it's kind of a human example of what you're talking about really emphasizing the positive. Mm-hmm. Was you guys were giving me very clear instruction, and you tell me when I was doing it right and you tell me when I was doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. But I would always feel when I felt that extra bit of energy and that extra bit of encouragement from both of you when I did something right. Mm-hmm. And then I'd do something right and then we'd quit and we just kind of take a break and then we'd sit and we'd sit and we'd chat and we'd let the horse take a breath and whatever. And I told Barb in her podcast that I had this, I finally had a somatic experience where I understood what that feels like for the horse, because it was a dopamine hit. Mm-hmm. And that's what she explained, is that from a chemical point of view, it was a dopamine hit. I got, I did it right. And then your memory and your brain, and our thalamus isn't even as big as horses. Horses have a huge thalamus in which they can establish pattern very quickly. Mm-hmm. I remember being like, okay, I got to find that feeling again.
Right.
I got to find that feeling that Lindy and Barb said, yeah, that's it.
It's part of that juice.
It's part of the juice.
That's the juice. Yeah.
So we got to go for. We got to do that for ourselves, and we got to do that for the horses.
Yeah.
And we got to do that for the horses, and we got to do that for ourselves.
And then when it all fits on a great run, and I know Barb will agree with me, when you have that really working, both of you, the horse and you, and I can remember specifically in certain really good runs I've had, really great runs on different, bunch of different horses. But I can remember a spot in those runs where it's just like that Avatar moment, like when you jump off the cliff and everything just hits, and it's like I have another terminology, I don't think I've shared it, but you go like hell slowly. That's what it feels like. You're going, and it's just like you can't, it's just like a swoosh. And then that stop is just like, it's not even a violent stop, but it's just like an elevator just dropping 10 floors when they stop. And that's, to me, that's that juice that I can't get enough of.
That gave me goosebumps. You go like hell.
Slowly.
Yeah.
And that's good to remember. I mean, it's good for me. I'd say it to myself a lot when I'm during a run. Like, slow down, slow down, slow down. But to me, like I said to you yesterday, slow down doesn't mean you can miss that first step.
Yeah.
Right? That first step of that cow, you've got to be a hold of it. You still got to get across that cow, because that first step will be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps before you react, if you don't react to the first step.
So to wrap every episode, I'm so excited to hear your answers to these questions.
Okay.
Ask the same 5 rapid fire questions.
Okay.
If you could read one book to the horse world, what would it be?
The Art of Racing in the Rain.
I knew you were going to say that.
I know. It's my favorite book.
Who is the most iconic horse in history?
Well, I'm going to say Betcher Blue Boons. My great mare.
Yeah. Most undervalued skill as a rider?
Patience.
Who is the greatest horseman or horsewoman in history?
You know, I know of a few, but I'm going to stick with greatest horseman. God, there's a couple. Choose one, Lindy. Choose. A, B, A, B. I'm going to stick with Ingersoll.
And I have a feeling I know the answer to this question. Mares, stallions, or geldings?
Mares. I love mares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
I love them because they... Why do I love them? I love them because they can be really strong, you know, but tempered. You can talk them into things, and you can, you know, when you have a really strong mare, I think they're just as good as a really strong stud. Although stallions are, you know, so powerful and so dynamic, but I've had mares that are just as strong and just as dynamic. So I think they're tempered, and they don't. With the stallion, you always have the whole stallion thing. Too much testosterone sometimes, where then that's another thing you've got to address. And there's some trainers in our industry that are very good on stallions, and there's some that aren't. There's some that just don't even mess with them. But there's some very good ones, and my hat's off to them. But for me, I always have an affinity for the mares.
Lindy, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you. It's been fun. I enjoyed it. I'm glad you asked me.
Thank you. Thank you, Yeti, for supporting us on this journey of a lifetime as we traverse the heart of the horse world.